Stop everything and internalize this chilling, strategic truth. This world does not operate on a system that rewards kindness. It operates on a system that ruthlessly punishes it. The warm-hearted are systematically walked over. The overly generous are continuously taken advantage of. The predictable nice guys are guaranteed to finish last, while the cold, calculating minds sit unbothered at the apex of every power structure imaginable. Your natural warmth is a strategic liability because it renders you utterly predictable, and predictable people are easily used, manipulated, and instantly discarded the moment they cease to be useful. But coldness, a precise strategic detachment, does something fundamentally different. It makes you feared, it compels respect, and it renders you psychologically untouchable. Today, I am going to reveal the 7 Machiavellian lessons that will execute your transformation into someone dangerously cold, a force impossible to manipulate, impossible to exploit, and impossible to ignore. These are not outdated theories from a 500-year-old text. These are the exact psychological principles that surgically separate the wolves from the sheep in every boardroom, every critical relationship, and every power game being played right now. By the end of this video, you will understand why the most enduringly successful figures in history were not celebrated for their soft hearts, but for their unwavering, cold efficiency. You will learn precisely how to weaponize silence, how to control the trajectory of every conversation before it even begins, and how to forge a reputation so strategically intimidating that adversaries think twice before even considering a challenge. This mandate is not about abandoning morality. It is about becoming strategic. It is about recognizing the fatal cost of pity and choosing power instead. Machiavelli gave us the ultimate trade-off that defines this choice. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. In the modern context, this means your commitment to strategic clarity must outweigh your desire for universal affection. Drop this affirmation in the comments and commit to your new reality. I choose power over pity. My coldness is my command. Number 1. The harsh reality of unstrategic warmth. Here is the strategic truth that will immediately make you profoundly uncomfortable. Your natural warmth and kindness are actively being used against you every single day. This is not an assumption. It is a predictable behavioral pattern. When you project an image of unreserved warmth and open accessibility, what inevitably occurs? Your adversaries instantly know exactly which emotional buttons to push. They identify your deepest psychological weaknesses. They acquire a detailed roadmap for getting precisely what they want from you. But when you project strategic coldness, when you become unreadable, reserved, and opaque, they cannot decipher your angle, they cannot predict your moves, and crucially, they cannot manipulate your emotions against you. That calculated uncertainty is the exact source of your burgeoning power. The psychological cost of exposure. The fundamental error most people make is exposing their softest vulnerabilities. They confuse transparency with trustworthiness. Your kindness, divorced from strategic discipline, ceases to be a virtue and becomes a roadmap to your own exploitation. This is not theory. This is the ruthless calculus of human nature. We reserve our respect for what we cannot fully understand. We fear what we cannot control, and we strategically promote those who project strength and resilience over those who invite pity. Machiavelli defined the peril of unchecked generosity. He who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined. Ponder the weight of that warning. Every time you make someone else powerful at your own expense, every time you say an unnecessary yes, every time you assist someone who would never return the favor, every time you expose all your cards, you are systematically setting yourself up to be exploited and ultimately discarded. Your natural warmth, when deployed blindly, is not procuring love. It is merely making you useful, and useful people eventually get used up. Let me paint you a vivid, relatable scenario that illustrates this destructive dynamic. You have two acquaintances who both approach you seeking a significant loan. Friend A initiates a sympathy extraction maneuver. They approach you with visible distress, detailing their desperate financial problems, pulling fiercely at your heartstrings and moral obligation. They know precisely which emotional buttons to push because you have openly shown them all your soft spots. Here is the predictable outcome. They secure the money because your guilt prevents you from saying no. But when the repayment deadline arrives, there is always another emergency, another crisis, another reason why they cannot pay you yet. Your exposed warmth instantly made you an easy, perpetual target. Friend B approaches the situation with strategic detachment. They simply state the factual situation, provide a concise, realistic plan for what the money will achieve, offer a non-negotiable repayment timeline, and accept whatever your decision is without resorting to emotional appeals. Here is the outcome. They might not receive the money immediately, but if they do, they adhere to the repayment schedule. They respect your time and boundaries because you have demonstrated that you have non-negotiable standards. The law of power exchange. This is not theory. This is the relentless operation of human nature. The dangerous truth is this: nice people are used, strategically cold people are obeyed. Warmth, when used without discipline, invites exploitation. Strategic coldness commands respect. From today forward, you must internalize that every single interaction is a power dynamic. There is no neutral ground. Either you are strategically gaining power, or your unstrategic warmth is hemorrhaging power that you should be fiercely conserving for yourself. Coldness protects you. Warmth exposes you. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Coldness protects me. My value is non-negotiable. Number 2, the cold genius thinking. The vast majority of people exist as victims of circumstance. When adversity strikes, a professional slight, a personal betrayal, or a sudden devastating failure, their immediate emotional response is always, "Why me?" They retreat into emotional grievance. They wallow in the tragedy of betrayal, and they rely on flimsy excuses to justify their failure. Cold minds operate on a completely different psychological architecture. They have executed a strategic purge of the victim mentality. They instantly reject the self-pitying question, "Why me?" and pivot to the tactical command, "How can I use this to my advantage?" They do not process betrayal as a personal tragedy. They categorize it as actionable intelligence gathering. They do not view failure as defeat. They treat it as essential data that points directly to the flaws in their original strategy. The dichotomy of thought. This is the core difference between the compromised and the competent. Victim thinking is emotionally driven, reactive, and weak. It is characterized by warmth, sentimentality, and passive hope. Cold thinking is strategic, calculating, proactive, and powerful. It demands that you maintain psychological distance from the emotional noise. When an adverse event occurs, you must execute an immediate shift in perspective. Stop asking what is happening to you, and start asking what you can learn from this and how you can definitively turn this situation to your ultimate advantage. This profound shift changes the fundamental way you move through the world. You cease being a predictable reactor and become a ruthless strategist. You forbid other people's actions from determining your emotional state, and you transform into the force that systematically converts every obstacle into a necessary advantage and every setback into the perfect setup for a comeback. Machiavelli defined the separation between efficient action and delayed suffering. A wise man does at once what the fool does at last. This summarizes the difference between warm and cold thinking. Warm thinking reacts in predictable chaos. Cold thinking anticipates and controls. Warm thinking passively waits for permission. Cold thinking seizes control of the narrative and the required resources. The execution of coldness. The cold genius does not waste finite emotional energy on factors they cannot control. They meticulously conserve that energy for the moves that are structurally critical. They study patterns, they ruthlessly predict outcomes, and they position themselves to win regardless of the external chaos that surrounds them. Instead of getting angry when someone disrespects you, you calmly cut them out of your strategic orbit and use their confusion as proof of your superior stability. Instead of complaining about unfair treatment, you silently document everything and transform that information into leverage when the optimal moment for a counterstrike arrives. Instead of being hurt by a lie, you allow the adversary to continue the lie while you gather irrefutable evidence of their dishonesty for future strategic deployment. Every betrayal becomes a crucial lesson in human nature. Every setback is not a test of your survival, but a test of your resilience. Every disappointment is transformed into direct fuel for your determination to never be caught off guard again. The cold genius upgrades fast, adapts quickly, and always maintains 3 steps of foresight over everyone still trapped in the paralysis of their feelings. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I upgrade fast. Adversity is my data. Number 3. The primacy of results. Your emotions are not your allies. They are, in fact, relentlessly feeding you false, destructive information that systematically keeps you weak, vulnerable, and distanced from the success you rightly deserve. This is the central cold reality. Your entire emotional operating system evolved to help you survive in the brutal, immediate world of caves and tribal existence, not to help you strategically thrive in the complex, long-term warfare of boardrooms and modern competition. Your emotional reflexes are designed for a world that ceased to exist millennia ago. In today's high-stakes environment, uncontrolled emotion is an operational liability you can no longer afford. Think about the last significant decision you made based on how you felt in that fleeting moment. How did that impulse decision truly work out for your long-term benefit? The answer is almost certainly poorly. This is because emotions inherently cloud judgment. They make you instinctively focus on immediate psychological comfort instead of sustainable results. They compel you to choose what feels good over what demonstrably works. But results never lie. Results do not care about your personal feelings. Results are indifferent to subjective fairness. Results only communicate what objectively happened, not what you wished would happen. The cold calculus versus warm illusion. This disparity explains why cold minds trust only results over volatile emotions. They refuse to make critical decisions based on transient feelings. They execute based on demonstrable effectiveness. They consciously reject short-term comfort and choose long-term structural effectiveness. Let's dissect a common scenario where emotional thinking is catastrophic. You are mired in a relationship with someone who consistently treats you poorly, yet your powerful emotion tells you to stay, to try harder, and to believe they will miraculously change. Your emotions whisper that leaving would be cruel, that you must grant infinite chances, and that maybe things will get better. But the objective results tell a different, brutal story. The results show a clear, escalating pattern of disrespect. The results reveal someone who is actively exploiting your warmth and tolerance. The data proves unequivocally that despite your efforts, nothing fundamental has changed. A cold mind trusts the results displayed over time. A cold mind does not waste finite time and energy on false hope. A cold mind executes a surgical, clean cut, accepting the loss quickly to pivot toward better, more deserving opportunities. Machiavelli defined the most reliable motivators in human nature. Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear. Here is the insight the strategist grasps. Fear is a more consistent, predictable, and therefore more strategically reliable governor of behavior than love. Love can be faked, manipulated, and turned on and off based on convenience. But fear, the fear of consequence, the fear of loss, is consistent, honest, and reliably gets results. Strategic deployment of feeling. This principle does not demand you eliminate feeling, but that you use your emotions as strategic tools. Your feelings must serve your goals, not the other way around. When you feel the urge to perform an act of undeserved kindness or niceness, you must pause and ask, what tangible result am I trying to achieve here? If being nice does not move me closer to my goal, then I will not be nice. When you feel the urge to avoid a difficult, necessary conversation because it might cause temporary hurt, pause. Ask, what happens if I delay this? If avoiding it creates exponentially bigger structural problems later, I will have the conversation now. Comfort is not a virtue. It is a profound weakness. Clarity is power. The cold mind chooses clarity every single time, ensuring every action contributes to the desired outcome. Number 4. Silence as a strategic weapon. The vast majority of people are psychologically compromised by a primal terror of silence. They compulsively fill every conversational pause with words, every moment of tension with frantic noise, and every gap with nervous, unnecessary chatter. In doing so, they foolishly give away all their power. But for the disciplined strategist, silence is not an absence, it is a surgical weapon. And when you learn to wield this weapon with cold precision, you instantly become a dangerous, unreadable force. Silence actively manufactures discomfort, and people, driven by their need for psychological ease, will expend enormous energy and resources to extinguish that discomfort. They will reveal sensitive information they should protect. They will impulsively make concessions and promises they shouldn't make. They will give you precisely what you want, often at a substantial cost to themselves, just to make the silence stop. The psychology of the pause in negotiation. Think back to the last crucial negotiation you witnessed. Who spoke first after the primary offer was tabled? Whoever spoke first likely lost. Why? Because speaking first reveals anxiety. It broadcasts a signal of weakness and confirms that you are uncomfortable with the sustained silence. But when you stay silent, when you allow that uncomfortable pause to stretch just a moment longer than everyone expects, you generate a psychological pressure that relentlessly works in your favor. Silence is intimidation without aggression. It is control without confrontation. It is power without needing violence. Let me show you how this pressure operates in practice. Someone launches an unreasonable request at you. The weak response is to immediately say no, and then launch into a lengthy defensive explanation of why the request is impossible. The master strategist stays silent. You let the adversary sit with the sound of their own request hanging in the quiet air. More often than not, they will become so uncomfortable that they begin backtracking on their own, offering concessions or mitigating their demand before you even need to open your mouth. This is the power of cold silence. It forces others into costly psychological activity. The strategic difference: control versus fear. Your silence must originate from a place of absolute control, not anxious fear. There is a profound strategic difference between true strategic silence, which is calculated, purposeful, and a deliberate choice, and anxious silence, which is merely reactive and defensive. When you master strategic silence, you gain something invaluable: unpredictability. People cannot decipher your thoughts. They cannot anticipate your next move. They cannot utilize your predictable reactions against you. Machiavelli defined the efficiency of indirect conflict. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. Your strategic silence is a refined form of deception. It brilliantly conceals your true intentions while simultaneously acting as a highly efficient tool for gathering intelligence about everyone else's desperation and breaking points. Emotional control equals psychological dominance. When you can sit comfortably in the silence while everyone else squirms and makes noise, you are the undisputed controller of the room. Your silence should feel like a chilling threat to those who oppose you and like wisdom to those who respect you. It should make the weak nervous and the strong intellectually curious. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence cuts. My power is absolute. Number 5. Fear meets desire. Power is not a random gift from fortune. It is not an inheritance. It is not something that is simply given to the deserving. Power is precisely calculated, and there exists a formula for its acquisition that the vast majority of men will never manage to decipher. Here is the architecture of that formula. Understand human nature faster and more accurately than everyone else, and then use that profound understanding to predictably influence and govern behavior. Every single human being, regardless of their mask, title, or wealth, is driven by the same foundational forces: fear and desire. The forces of fear: fear of loss, fear of pain, fear of being exposed as a fraud, and the paralyzing fear of being left behind or alone. The forces of desire: the unquenchable desire for gain, the hunger for pleasure, the need for recognition, and the craving for structural security. When you can identify a person's primary fear and their dominant desire faster than they can successfully conceal them, you instantly hold the keys to their entire behavioral operating system. You know the precise psychological buttons to push to elicit the response you want. The cold mind's advantage. Most people spend their lives engaged in a tireless effort to conceal their true fears and vulnerabilities. They meticulously construct false personas, wear strategic masks, and pretend to want things they have no genuine interest in. But the cold mind sees through this performance. A strategist does not listen to the performance. A strategist studies patterns, reads between the lines, and analyzes what is not being said. Let me give you a high-leverage example. You are dealing with a subordinate who is aggressively independent, constantly acts tough, and boasts about their self-sufficiency. What is their structural fear? Dependence. What is their real hidden desire? To be needed and valued by others, while never needing anyone else themselves. Once you possess this key, you know exactly how to engage. You do not challenge their independence. That would trigger a defense mechanism. Instead, you position yourself as the indispensable source that helps them feel more independent. You create opportunities for them to help you, which validates their perceived value without ever making them feel indebted. This is power. This is influence. This is silent structural control, reading the signals of insecurity. The key to this formula is observation, treating people like specimens under a microscope. The cold mind accepts people as they are and works within that reality to achieve its goals. You must listen to what people complain about, what they brag about, and what they spend their time and money on, because these patterns are not random. They expose the insecurities they are desperately trying to cover. The person who relentlessly talks about their wealth is often profoundly insecure about their financial status. The person who constantly lists their acquaintances and connections is deeply afraid of isolation or being alone. The person who won't stop reminding you of their intelligence secretly doubts their own cognitive value. Once you see these core patterns, you cannot unsee them. And once you see them, you hold an immense psychological advantage over everyone still struggling to hide them. Machiavelli mandated the necessity of fluid strategy. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. This is critical to the formula. The same psychological approach does not work on everyone. You must adapt your specific strategy based on the individual's dominant driver. With someone driven by fear, you strategically offer or threaten security. With someone driven by ego, you dispense or withhold recognition. With someone driven by greed, you present or restrict immediate opportunity. You transform yourself into precisely what they require you to be, to gain what you require from them. This is not crude manipulation. This is strategic communication. This is speaking their psychological language instead of forcing them to speak yours. The cold mind never wastes energy wishing people were better or different. It accepts the flawed reality of human nature and works within that framework to execute its goals. Pick 3 people in your life today and begin identifying their primary fear and desire. The patterns will become terrifyingly obvious once you know what strategic signals to hunt for. Now I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I calculate power. My focus is strategic. Number 6. The silent protector. Your reputation is not a passive description of your past. It is an active strategic force that precedes you into every room. It walks ahead of you, influencing every conversation about you that occurs when you are absent, and it is the single most critical factor determining whether people see you as someone to respect or someone to ignore. Most people fatally misunderstand this truth. They believe reputation is built upon being liked. They are profoundly wrong. Reputation is built upon being structurally respected, and that respect is earned by being seen as an individual who cannot be moved, broken, or trifled with. When your reputation precedes you like a formidable force, you immediately gain immense strategic advantages. You no longer have to engage in every trivial battle. You are freed from the constant, exhausting need to prove yourself in every new situation. You do not have to waste energy convincing people to take your competence seriously, because they already do. The anatomy of quiet power. Think about the most influential people you know. Their power is not defined by their bank account alone. It is defined by their influence. What is their universal trait? People think twice before crossing them. They meticulously consider the consequences before attempting any disrespect. They know unequivocally that engaging with them comes with a palpable cost. This is the function of a cold, effective reputation. It creates consequences without you ever having to execute them yourself. The majority commit the error of believing that building a powerful reputation demands being loud, aggressive, or overtly intimidating. That is amateur hour. True power is quiet. True power does not beg for attention or need to announce its arrival. True power is felt, not heard. The most strategically dangerous people in any environment are often the ones you barely notice until you suddenly realize you desperately need something from them, or until you make the fatal mistake of underestimating their capacity. They do not dissipate their energy on small, petty conflicts. They are masters of the strategic pause, and when they finally strike, the move is decisive and devastating. This is the reputation you must meticulously construct. Someone who is quietly competent, strategically patient, and ruthlessly effective when action is required. Building the impenetrable story, you must become the architect of a reputation that operates as your silent protector. Here is the blueprint for constructing this formidable image. You must keep your promises even when it is inconvenient. You must never make threats you are not fully prepared to follow through on. Your word must become a contract that holds its value. You must consistently speak less and accomplish significantly more. Focus on being the solution, never the source of the problem. When someone crosses a boundary, Your response must be executed with calculated precision, not emotional reaction. This reinforces the idea that your actions are driven by objective strategy, not feelings. People notice this discipline. They begin to realize that you are not like everyone else who talks big but delivers small. You are not the type to make excuses when obstacles arise. You are the individual who gets results quietly and efficiently. The rule of association. Machiavelli gave the ruler the critical rule of strategic alliance. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. This is the law of association. The people you allow into your inner circle either fundamentally add to your reputation or actively detract from it. If you surround yourself with weak people, you will be perceived as weak. If you associate with chronic mediocrity, you will be categorized as mediocre. If you surround yourself with those who command respect, you will be seen as someone who commands respect. This does not forbid general friendliness. It mandates strategic awareness of who you are publicly associated with and whose counsel you are seen accepting. Your reputation must intimidate mediocrity. Average people should feel a necessary, slight discomfort in your presence, not because you are cruel, but because your unyielding standards make their lack of discipline glaringly obvious. Excellence makes mediocrity nervous. Discipline makes lazy people feel judged. Consistency makes unreliable people feel exposed. Use this psychological leverage. Build a reputation that strikes before you even speak. Build a presence that compels people to check themselves before they dare approach you. Build standards that inspire strategic respect and necessary caution in equal measure. Number 7, decide the terms of engagement. Here is the ultimate, non-negotiable power move. Do not join the adversary's debate. You must decide what the debate is fundamentally about. The majority of people spend their entire lives reacting to external agendas. Someone introduces a topic and they dutifully respond to it. Someone asks a question and they immediately answer it. Someone else sets the terms of the entire interaction and they meekly accept those terms. This passive behavior is weak thinking. This is warm thinking. This is the act of surrendering control before the conversation has even truly begun. Cold minds do not react. They proactively set the frame. They do not respond to other people's psychological agendas. They create their own agenda and skillfully force everyone else to respond to it. Let me demonstrate this mechanism with absolute clarity. Someone approaches you with a complaint about an error you made. Instead of immediately falling into a defensive spiral and explaining yourself, which is the expected weak response, you reframe the conversation entirely. You look at them calmly and state, "I can see you're upset. However, my focus is now on the solution. What do you believe is the most productive way for us to handle this moving forward?" Notice the precise psychological maneuver executed. They attempted to frame the interaction around your mistake and place you in the defensive position. You instantly seized control and reframed the interaction around finding solutions and placing yourself in the leadership position. The psychological dynamics of redirection. Consider a second high-stakes example. An adversary attempts to pressure you into making a quick, impulsive decision by declaring, "I need your final answer right now." The emotional response is to feel rushed and make a poor, immediate choice. The strategic response is immediate frame control. "I understand that timing is a priority for you. Let me check my schedule and see precisely when I can dedicate the focused, quality attention this critical matter truly deserves." They attempted to set the frame around urgency and control your pace. You instantly changed the frame to quality, competence, and thoughtfulness, successfully slowing the interaction down to your own deliberate pace. The person who controls the frame controls the outcome. It is a law of psychological physics. Frame control is not limited to mere conversations. It is about controlling the entire narrative of your life and all your critical interactions. It is about being aggressively proactive instead of chronically reactive. It is about making your adversaries play your game instead of you playing theirs. In negotiations, you forbid yourself from accepting their first offer as the starting point. You reframe the entire discussion around the ultimate value, competence, and desired long-term outcomes you bring to the table. In relationships, you do not chase partners who are pulling away. You reframe your own value by creating such irresistible resources that their desire compels them to seek you out. In conflict, you refuse to be emotionally dragged into their personal drama. You maintain a cold demeanor and instantly steer the focus back to objective facts and strategic solutions. Machiavelli demanded immediate strategic clarity. The wise man does at once what the fool does. Finally, the wise man sets the frame immediately. The fool accepts whatever frame is given to them and spends his time trying to work within someone else's rules. This is why true strategic coldness grants you narrative control. When you are not emotionally invested in other people's volatile reactions, you gain the clarity to see the bigger structural game being played and decide whether to dominate that game or change the rules entirely. Frame control is about leading every interaction instead of perpetually following. Start practicing this today. In your next crucial conversation, forbid yourself from immediately responding. Pause and ask yourself, what weak frame are they trying to set? And what dominant frame would serve my interests better? Then use precise language to steer the entire conversation in your direction. When someone asks you a question designed to put you on the defensive, do not refuse to answer. Ask them a better controlling question. You set the rules of engagement for your own existence. If you do not like the game being played, you must change the game. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I set rules. My frame is absolute. Now you have internalized all 7 laws of strategic coldness. Understanding them intellectually is insufficient. You must embody them. You must cease being someone who merely knows about coldness and undergo the ultimate transformation into someone who is dangerously, structurally cold. True coldness is not about being crudely emotionless. It is not about being unnecessarily cruel. It is not about shutting down your humanity. True coldness is about being surgically precise, unreadable, and unfailingly strategic. When you achieve this state, your stillness becomes a potent threat. This threat is not derived from physical aggression, but from the fact that your adversaries cannot predict what you are thinking or what your next move will be. Unpredictability is the highest form of power. Your deliberate absence instantly becomes a warning. When you are not in the room, people are compelled to wonder what master plan you are executing and whether they have committed a lapse that has earned your disapproval. This is influence without the expenditure of effort. Your unwavering presence instantly becomes domination, not through intimidation, but through undeniable competence and unshakable confidence. People naturally defer to someone who clearly has their strategic house in order and knows exactly what needs to be done. This profound transformation requires constant, conscious choice. Every day, you must consciously choose calculation over emotional reaction. Every interaction demands you choose strategy over impulsive feeling. Every challenge forces you to choose growth over ephemeral comfort. But when you commit to this path, something extraordinary happens. You stop being someone who gets played and start being someone who dictates the game at a level most people don't even know exists. Machiavelli provided the final cold truth about human motivation. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. People care exponentially more about what affects their resources and security directly than what affects them emotionally. Understanding this allows you to predict behavior and influence outcomes in ways that appear almost supernatural to the uninitiated. The world does not belong to the kind or the loud. It belongs to the dangerously cold. It belongs to those who understand that power is not a gift. It is a resource that is strategically taken and fiercely guarded. You now possess the strategic blueprint. The question is not whether these lessons work. They have worked for centuries. The question is whether you possess the discipline to apply them consistently and the courage to become the powerful, effective person you are truly capable of becoming. If this video has fundamentally changed how you see power and influence, you must hit that like button right now. If you want to continue developing this level of strategic thinking, you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel. Drop your favorite lesson from this video in the comments below. The choice is yours. Stay warm and predictably vulnerable, or become dangerously cold and strategically unstoppable. Remember, the world belongs to those who play by different rules.